All right. I think we are live, running it. Welcome, everybody. Let me share screen as well, actually, so we can just kick that off to a flying start. Welcome, everybody. So, for those of you who are familiar, we are Andre Bright and Natasha Bonsu, burnout prevention coach. Natasha is a financial well-being consultant, and we decided to come together to do this series called the Stress and Financial Well-being series for teachers. Because one of the things we saw is that in schools, there's a lot of pressure on our teachers, especially within education, just in general. So we wanted to put something together which was to support them. We're developing programs that are going to be able to be delivered within schools, and this series is an opportunity for us to reach out to you individually. One, to help you if you're a teacher or educator, but also two, to be able to be that conduit to get into schools. So if this is the kind of thing that you feel like you need individually, then it might be something that your team, your other teachers might need as well. So we'll give you an offer at the end, which is something that we can help you bring into the schools. If you were engaging with us on the Zooms, then you would have filled out a form which gave you the option to say what level of the school you were in. But at the end, we'll give you an option, and we'll put the links in the chats, in the comments, especially if you're on LinkedIn, but also if you're on YouTube, which will give you a way for you to communicate with us. All right. So the first question I always ask is, why is this topic important for you? So if you're in the chats in LinkedIn, just put the answer in the chats. Why is this topic important for you? Now, one of the things I always say is that stress is universal. Burnout is universal. Finances are universal. So you might not even be a teacher. So you might have seen the topic and thought, yeah, this relates to me. But you might be within the education sector. You might be teaching in schools, universities. You might be an educator on stage. Whatever it might be, you might feel that this relates to you specifically, especially if you feel like you've started to make decisions financially which might not be conducive for your well-being. So Natasha, as I'm going through, if there's any comments that pop up, do let me know. And then what we'll do is, as we're going, I'll give space for us to come back to, yeah, we got cost of living crisis, which is in there as well. That's definitely important. Right now, for those of you old enough, we've been through a few of these financial situations, and this just seems to be another one that we're in at the moment. The cost of living crisis is going through the roof. There's a lot of things happening globally which are affecting that, and us on the day-to-day are being affected by resources going up, your bills and things going up, the prices of groceries. But then at the same time, you need to be able to deliver at work, because you're bringing the next generation up into the world. So really high level, just doing the welcome and house rules at the moment. Then we're going to go to some financial resilient strategies with Natasha, and then I'm going to pick up with some mental resilient strategies. We're going to have a little space for Q&A at the end, and then the offer, which is how we're going to be bringing these into schools that need it. So really quick house rules, high level. The first one is to assume positive intent. It's one of my favorite house rules, actually, and I use it in life. If there's an opportunity that something can be said with a heart of gold and positively, use that as your reasoning. Number two is speak for yourself. I cannot speak for every Black male. I'm only speaking for Andre. Number three is confidentiality matters. So please don't share anything in the chats or comments or on screen if it's something that you don't want shared publicly. Number four is respect different perspectives. The whole idea about this is diversity. People are coming from different backgrounds, which is what builds the value of this conversation. Number five is engage, don't dominate. So in this case, you can actually go ham in the comments, right? So write down everything you think, and then we'll be able to filter those out to be able to share it with the group. Number six is no judgment, only growth. You're going to have people who are going to be sharing things that you may not necessarily agree with, but it's an opportunity. Be curious. Number seven is take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And number eight is save questions to paste into the Q&A, right? So the way we're doing it here, because it's on LinkedIn and and YouTube is write into the chats, into the comments, leave it there, and then we're going to pick it up towards the Q&A session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Natasha, your financial wellness consultant.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I love this. Let me start sharing my screen. Hopefully, everybody can see this.
Perfect. You can see it.
Oh, thank you. So today's topic is on resilience. Last week I spoke about strategies, and this week is all about resilience. I'm a big advocate for resilience because we all need to have somebody guide us when we're feeling low, when we're feeling down, how we can pick ourselves up and try again. As my mum will say, life will life every single one of us. But the difference between some of us is how we manage to get up and deal with the unexpected. So let me explain further. Financial resilience is all about the ability to cope with the unexpected financial challenges and the disruptions and maintain financial stability, having adequate resources and strategies in place to adapt. So, for example, I always say this, but it's the truth. COVID happened unexpectedly, and it showed and highlighted to a lot of us that when we couldn't go to work on the 9th of March, how can some of us cope with that unexpected financial challenge? Not everybody's job was a work from home kind of job. So some of us literally could not go to work, and we work cash in hand, or we work pay as you go. How did we manage those unexpected challenges and the disruptions? Again, we are in this world for 20, 30, 50, 70 years. Disruptions will come into place. Children will come, sickness, death, house renovations, the broken boiler. Disruptions will come that will shock our financial core and let us know if we are able to cope with the unexpected. So, this workshop is really about knowing, guaranteed, the unexpected will happen. Now is our job to know how to cope when the unexpected happens because it's guaranteed. Now, the benefits of understanding and being able to be financially resilient is that it's going to reduce your stress because you know the storm is on its way. You've checked the weather forecast, you know you need to have your umbrella ready and the raincoat ready. Because you know that this is now going to come, you can anticipate it and hopefully you can now manage the stress associated with it. Now, when you also become more financially resilient, the benefit is that you can plan long term for your financial goals. You know you're pregnant, you know you've got 9 months, you know you're going to need the cot, the X, the Y, the Z. We can now start planning for those goals and how we're going to maneuver. Again, because we know the unexpected is on its way, we can now have some financial control because we know we have 2 months worth of living expenses hidden under the bed, hidden in a savings account. So if the unexpected comes, we don't have to go to the bank to borrow money. We can be our own bank and borrow from ourselves. And then also finally, being financially resilient, the benefit is it allows you to take advantage of the opportunities of saving and investing that will come your way because you've put something aside for the opportunity. Because as much as I'm going to keep on saying the unexpected will come, there are certain unexpected things that are positive and there are unexpected things that are negative. So the unexpected thing that is positive is an opportunity. For example, this week, for those who like Usher, there's an Usher concert. If somebody had a spare ticket, there's an opportunity to buy it half the price than full price. That's very vague, but that's an opportunity. You've passed your driving test, you can't afford a brand new car, your neighbour's selling their car for £3,000. It's an opportunity, but did you have that money in place in order to execute that opportunity? Now, I say all of this to say the reason why I talk about financial well-being and why I'm now an expert. My background is in asset and pension management in the UK and Ghana. I've had experienced financial challenges in my life. I've had seasons of I've lived worked in corporate London, earned a lot of money. I've been unemployed with 2 kids, so didn't have much, and now I'm self-employed. So my salary has fluctuated over the years, and I think and believe now I'm more financially resilient because I know how quickly life can change. I speak about personal finance, women in enterprise, and resilience at the home and relationship with money. Now, let's go back to this. If you take your time to ask yourself this question, what are your financial stresses? Every single one of us have our own unique stresses when it comes to money. Why? Because we all have our own unique relationship with money that was formed at 7 years old. Some of us were born and raised in a household that had a lot of money. So money was never an option. Money was never, we never lacked in your household pertaining to money. Some of us raised in a household where our parents didn't have much. They worked 2, 3 jobs. So it was difficult to buy the extras. Our parents were only able to afford the necessities. And what your relationship you have at 7 years old has now projected into your life right now. So some of us, your financial stressor could simply be your salary is just not enough. You need a pay rise and you needed it yesterday, for example. For others, their financial stressor, excuse me, the hay fever this week is really getting me. Another financial stressor could simply be the cost of living crisis. Your salary is not going as quickly as the rising cost of gas, electricity, and food. Or for some of you, your financial stress is triggered because you've had twins last week, or you have twins on the way, or even you have one baby on the way, let alone twins. You have one child on the way in 6 months' time, and you can already foresee that a newborn baby in your house is going to be stressful, or some of you are having to relocate from your 2 bedroom apartment to a 4 bedroom apartment, and you now know, or 4 bedroom house, should I say, that the cost of living in that situation is different. So if you can put in the chat what you think your financial stresses are, because what's unique to you, I will then be able to advise you dependent on your stressor, because how I would advise somebody who has a family on the way is different from somebody who I would advise who is experiencing rise of cost of living crisis. Once you have identified your stresses, let me give you an example. If your stressor was a low salary, for example, teachers in the United Kingdom on average receive a salary of £33,000. So that financial strain is met with basic costs and needs, okay? And the compensation does not reflect the demanding nature of the job. So with teachers, typically £33,000 per year. That is it. It's a low salary. The pay rise is, because they're civil servants, the pay rise is not as high as obviously a corporate job or another type of job. So how can they manage that stress? Another stressor for somebody else could be the rise in living cost. Inflation and average rent costs have surged, so therefore it's difficult to maintain your standard of living. And another typical stressor that I hear quite regularly is family responsibilities. Not just teachers, us all, but 1 in 4 teachers are parents. Now, as soon as you have a child in your house, you have childcare related costs, because you're going to start work at 7:30. You need to take your child to the childminder at 6:30. And it's just, again, juggling cost and salary, which can lead to burnout. Now, how to build the resilience, especially financial resilience in this scenario. I don't know if any of you here have experienced working with a personal trainer, but I have. And let me tell you, my personal trainer, it was, he was good, but he was painful. And I was always honest with him. I said to him, the weight was too heavy and he wouldn't let me reduce the amounts of repetition. So he said, if you can't give me 10 reps, the best I can do for you, Natasha, is to reduce the weight. So if I was carrying a 50k dumbbell, he said the best he would do is drop it down to 45, but he wants me to do 10 reps. I say this to say, when it comes to building financial resilience, we have to decrease the weight, being the weight of the stressor, finding out what the stressor was and asking yourself, how can I take this weight off my shoulder, but still show up every day at work and in life? So you're decreasing the weight, you're decreasing the stressor so that you can maintain the repetition of showing up. The last thing that I want people to do is to give up, not showing up, not doing the reps, not going into work, not calling in sick. I'd rather we learn how to manage the stressor and reduce it so we can keep the repetition. So, how do we build financial resilience? I believe by building financial resilience, there are 5 steps. The first thing that we have to do, as boring, as vanilla as this sounds, it is honestly having a budget. I can't help you with your stress, especially financial stress, if we don't talk about budget. So, some people like the good old pen and paper, some people like an Excel spreadsheet, and now we have budgeting apps. Whatever type of app that works for you, let's start now. I like a spreadsheet. I like it to be obviously landscape, column A, January up till December, and then the rows with all my income. So my part-time job, my full-time job, my freelance work, child benefit. You insert those lines. Then your expenses, obviously your rent, your gas, your electricity, your petrol, your car insurance, all of that. Then at the bottom, it will total it up and take your income and minus your expenses. As trivial as this sounds, when you see it black and white, it's really a great eye opener to show you where your money is going and what we can do to, if we need to cancel certain direct debits. Because if you don't write it down, you just can't see where your money's going. So number one is a budget. Number two, once that budget is in place, and let's be real, for some of us, after a month, we've got £60 to our name, £200 to our name. Fine. We now know that's what we've got left. Then we can now maneuver how we can stretch that £200 to last us till payday. The next thing that makes people resilient is having the emergency fund. Again, I use the example of COVID. It showed us that if we are unemployed for even a month, we don't have enough savings to cover our rent, our gas, our electricity, our water, our phone contracts. So this is a really great time to start building the emergency fund, because we all know how long it takes to find a new job. By the time you write the new CV, the new cover letter, you send it over, they give you the interview, they give you the start date, you work for a few weeks, you get paid. Typically, it's 6 to 8 weeks. What are you living on in 6 to 8 weeks if you do not have the emergency fund? So, it's as difficult as it sounds, I really want people to find out how they can save for that emergency fund and then put that amount of money in a high yield savings account. So I give everybody a quick strategy. Save me 1 month's worth of living expenses. Once you've saved 1 month, I'm going to increase the weight, 2 months worth of living expenses. Then typically I let people stop at 3 months. Some people like to stretch to 6 months, but ideally 3 months worth of rent, gas, electricity bills, put it in a high yield savings account. And that's going to build the resilience, because now you know, if I lose my job tomorrow, I've got money to keep me going. Next, that I say to build resilience, we're in a side hustle culture right now, guys. It's everybody's got a side hustle. We call it everybody has the 9 to 5. Then we have the 6 till 10. The 6 to 10 is your side hustle. That means you're a tutor, you're a freelance writer, you create educational resources, you do some consulting, whatever it is that you feel like is befitting for you and your family and your structure, and you want to monetize your talent or your gift, would be a side hustle, and that income would go in towards your emergency fund or any financial goals that you have for your future. Another reason why sometimes people are not financially resilient is because they're leveraged too much, they've borrowed too much, and they're in a lot of financial debt. So this is a great time to reduce the stresses of life by managing your debt. And when I say priority, I mean that there are certain debtors who are top priority. How do I define a top priority? A debtor who will evict you from your home, a debtor who will cut off your services, or a debtor who will take you to prison. So obviously, if we don't pay our rent or our mortgage, we are evicted. If we don't pay our gas or an electricity bill, they will cut off our supply. If we don't pay, for example, our TV license, it can lead to imprisonment. So there are certain debtors, I call them dogs with a bark. There are dogs who will bark but no bite. But priority debtors are dogs who bark and bite. Why? Because they can evict you, cut you off, or send you to prison. So find out who's important and let's tackle them first. Then your non-priority debtors are the dogs who bark. That means the credit card company, that means buy now, pay later. Those kinds of loans are priority, but they're non-priority if you have a priority debt that we need to tackle first. Once you start tackling these debtors and they stop barking at you, stop calling you, stop writing you letters, it reduces the stress level. So two strategies: you can have the snowball, or the avalanche repayment method. The one with the highest interest, maybe you have a loan, it's 10% interest compared to another credit card, let's just say 5%. We're going to tackle the 10% interest loan and put all our resources to repay that debt. Once we've repaid that debt, the money that we was making to repay it, maybe £50 a month, now goes into the 5% interest. If you want more information on this, please send me a message and I'll send you a template. And then finally, we're in a culture where we are so fortunate that we have so much information. There's webinars, there's books, there's podcasts. But as we consume information, sometimes we don't take action on what we have learned. So if I could take anything away from this webinar that you're listening to me today, is to take one step. Is it a case that for you, you can start working on your side hustle because you've already got a budget and you've already got your emergency fund? So for you, the next thing that you need to tackle is a side hustle. Or for some people, they have a budget, they have a side hustle, but they have so much debt. That means for you, your strategy to be financially resilient is to tackle your priority and your non-priority debts. Okay, everybody is unique in what they can use, but I've given you 5 strategies that you could take 2 away and action today. So I say all of this to say, I'll give you an example of somebody I've worked with. Mark is a secondary school teacher in Bournemouth, earning £36,000. He was overwhelmed, he was stressed, and he was struggling to manage his expenses. His financial stresses was rising cost, and he had a newborn baby, just 6 weeks old when he met me, and it was just too much for him with the cost of work, a cost of the newborn baby, and just not enough time to understand his left from his right. Obviously, lack of sleep doesn't help you when you're trying to make financial decisions. So I suggested to Mark to work on his budget. He had loads of subscriptions that he could just easily cancel whilst he focused on his newborn baby. The savings that he did have needed to work a bit harder for him. So we moved that into a high yield savings account. And then he said, you know what, during summertime, I do obviously have the 6 week summer holiday. Once he's taken 2-3 weeks off for himself, he doesn't mind using the other remaining 3 weeks to focus on a side hustle to generate some more income. Once we implemented those kinds of strategies for Mark, his results were based on the income that he had taken from the council subscriptions, and the side hustle money went more into his emergency fund because obviously now he has the newborn baby. There's an emergency when it was just Mark, then there's emergency when it's Mark and a newborn baby. You just need that extra cushion and the peace of mind and the reduced stress. So I say this to say Mark's transformation can be applicable to everybody on this call today. How do we do this? You just need to pick a strategy that you can start today. We're all unique, guys. We're all different. I can't give you a one size fits all, But if you really ask yourself the question, what is my stressor? Therefore, what strategy will complement my stressor? You can take and work on it today, and it can really help you be more resilient. Because as much as we want the salary increase, by the time you go to your boss, you do the staff review, you demonstrate what you've done, how great you was at work, you document all your results. By the time that review gets done, you get the promotion. We're talking about 6 months, but we can cancel certain subscriptions instantly. So there's going to be a long-term strategy, and then there's a short-term strategy. I think I'm talking too much today, Andres. I'm about to shut shop, but we have another session in 2 weeks' time about securing your future, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
Awesome. And it's not easy to talk while you have pollen just just going for it. But you did well. I
Thank
would
you.
generally encourage you in the audience to put in the chats what strategy you might want to start with. Is it
Yeah.
typing the debt? Are you going to start with a slow snowball effect? Do you have some? Are you going to look through your subscriptions? Are you going to try by saving like the first grand, or maybe just start saving anything at all?
Mm.
Is there anything that you can do right now, like as a result of this conversation? What are you going to start with? Because it's really good place to, she's given you some really practical things that you can do right now that you can start to apply, literally as we're speaking here right now. So put it in the chats of what you're going to apply from that, and actually commit to it. You know, if you need to have people around you to help you, let someone know what your strategy is going to be. You know, in the next 6 months, I want to try and get to here. You know, there is financial exclusion where you literally can't even get a bank account. You know, there's financial instability where, you know, anything could happen right now and it'll throw you off the bandwagon and you'll be in real emergency. There's financial stability where you got like a little bit of bank, you know, your incoming is slightly exceeding your outgoings. But then, you know, we're all trying to get to this idea about financial freedom, but we can't, some of us can't yet get to the point where we've got 25 times our rent or whatever it is, so that we can just say what they say, the FU money, if they put it that way, that you could just say to your boss, peace. Some of us some of us aren't there yet. So we got to take small steps for us to get to the stage where we can at least know that if anything happens today, we're going to be okay tomorrow. So really do pay attention to what she's doing. Really incredible, practical tips there. All right. Okay. So back to me. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about the stress side of things, and I'm going to lead with a quote I always start with: "The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the leader adjusts the sails." It's a quote by John Maxwell, and the reason why I point this out is that what we often see, I think both of us actually, me and Natasha, is that we sometimes have people who are kind of either waiting for everything to turn out okay, or looking for every reason to kind of keep the to the safety. But the problem is, if the safety isn't working, if the patterns aren't working, if your habits aren't working, there's something that you might need to do to change their circumstances a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the burnout side of things, how we manage stress. So I'm a burnout prevention coach and also an architect and a dancer. So I do a whole lot of things, and I'm ICF certified. So I mainly work with individuals, but then also teams on the corporate side of things. I work with leadership in general, but recently I've really been pulled into education as a sector, just because I'm seeing the level of stress and the statistics that I'm going to be sharing with you as we go. Um, and just to introduce that idea, 72%, which is huge, 72% of educators in the UK say financial worries impact their mental health. That can come out in stress, it can come out in illnesses, it can come out in forgetfulness, it can come out with bad decision making, all this kind of things that we're going to be talking about today. So the hidden financial impact of burnout, let's talk about that for a little bit. Again, a little bit of data to put this in context. 1 in 3 teachers take time off due to stress, and that the impact of that can be lost earnings as a result. 63% avoid leadership roles due to burnout, which can mean lost career growth. If you think about your trajectory, if you're so stressed you can't take on a new position, then it means your career won't grow, but then also your finances won't increase, which can give you a little bit more levity. So I want to put a quick test into the group. Which of these has affected you most? So in the chats, if put a one if it's increased absences. So you're finding yourself being sick, if you find yourself just needing to take time off or book all the days off that you can. Number two in the chats, if you're avoiding leadership roles and you just can't face the idea of being promoted into a position because it means more responsibilities and you don't think you can handle the stress you already have, so you're not going for that. Put number three if you find impulsive financial decisions to be affecting you most. Are you making decisions when you're in fight or flight mode and you're panicking and you're making decisions for now without thinking about the long-term impact and finding yourself in a position where you don't have as many options because of decisions you made when you were in a panic mode? Or number four, if you're feeling stuck in survival mode, just in general, like everything seems to be in fight or flight at the moment, and you're only really seeing maybe the next week or month ahead as opposed to the years. So put it in the chats where you are, which of these is affecting you the most. And if any of those pop up, Natasha, if you can let me know as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Joyce has put number three, which is impulsive financial decisions. I understand 100%. And this can show up in many different ways, and I'm going to tackle a little bit of that today, just as a recap. Last week we did a bit more of the foundation of all of this. So if you missed it, you can go back onto either of our pages, and you can see there because the good thing about LinkedIn now is you can got a replay, and I talked a little bit about how stress actually affects the body and gets us into fight and flight mode. And once we're in fight and flight mode, we start to make decisions based on the now, and that is basically your impulse. Okay, you get that letter through the door, you're making a decision now based on it. You're at a parent teachers meeting, and you make a decision based on that. You're looking at the options immediately in front of you and making the decision on that, as opposed to where you would want to end up and what you actually want, right? So as that, please continue to put them into the chats again. Number one, if it's increased absences and it might be showing up in your health and wellness. Number two, if it's avoiding leadership roles and you're thinking more of the short term instead of the long. Number three, impulsive financial decisions, if you're making decisions based on the now and not the long term, and it ends up catching you up later. And number four, if you're feeling stuck in survival mode. All right. So, how do you break the cycle then? We've talked a little bit about financial strategies and they're really practical. So, thank you, Natasha. So, now let's talk a little bit about the mental strategies as well. One thing I would encourage you to ask yourself is, what's one financial or mental resilience strategy that has worked for you in the past? When I ask this to clients, right, the initial response is there aren't any. That's usually the response they'll give, right? So what usually happens though, if you actually take time with it, you'd realize that that initial gut response to say there is no option, everything always turns out this way, I can't break out of that cycle, is actually part of that impulse fight or flight response. So sometimes we need to actually take a step back and pause and actually sit with the question, what's one financial strategy, financial or mental resilience strategy that has worked for you in the past? So think about your entire past. What tends to work? Is it that you need people around you and you need to be in a group doing like a partner, for example, group economics? Is it that you need to engage your family and your friends to tell you or help you not to make certain decisions or to remind you of the commitments you've made to your finances? Is it that you need tech? Are you using Moneybox or any of these other apps that helps you to save or invest or to diversify your funds or split it up into different pockets on your app systems? Is it that you need to be involved in a program of some sort? Is it that you need professional advice from your bank? Like, what is it that usually helps you get? Because what often happens is we get out of a red, but then we change our strategy once we think we're okay. And that ends up bringing us back down into that system. right? And there are certain internal and external factors. External environment, the economy, etc., are always going to be fluctuating, right? So when those things happen, we need to be resilient enough to be able to have processes that we know work no matter what external stresses are going on. Natasha, you said mindful spending, 100%. Have a think, and I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. Before you spend, have a think about it. And there's a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, which are going to help you with that mindful spending strategy. All right. So for me, I use the 3R framework, right? And the 3R framework is something really simple that you can use. I don't want to overwhelm you with ideas because that would lead you towards burnout anyway. So the irony is that adding lots of burnout prevention strategies can also lead you towards burnout because it's more things to think about. So I'm keeping this really simple. The first one is recognizing the strengths, which is what I was doing just now. How often do I acknowledge what's already working in my life? Actually shift that as a mindset. Look at what actually works and start looking for it. If I tell you yellow car right now when you go out into the road, you're likely to see yellow cars everywhere. And it's not because all of a sudden there's a campaign and people have suddenly bought yellow cars. It's just because what you pay attention to, you see more of. So once you start looking for the strengths in your financial strategies, you might start to see that actually, I tend to do pretty well within this season of the year, or this seems to be a red zone. I always seem to spend more then. So if you know that you're going to spend more around Christmas or you're going to spend more around specific birthdays, or you find yourself easier to save during the summer seasons than the winter seasons, then pay attention to what helps you do that and look at what the cycles are, the strategies that you actually do use, even in your subconscious. Raise it into your consciousness by paying attention to them. The second part of the 3R framework is reframing the challenges. Can you turn the problems into opportunities? Now, these days, I use this phrase more often than ever. Most people say problems into solutions. For me, solutions are great, but solutions just fix the problem. What we're trying to do is get to the point where we look at them as opportunities. If you find yourself struggling with finances, then anything you do to change that is an opportunity for growth, right? Which will give you a certain positive energy that can help reinforce the practices that you put in. Because what you don't want is to just be aiming to break even, because then it's a tentative space anyway. You want to think, what is the opportunity here? Natasha mentioned side hustles. She mentioned getting rid of closing reducing your expenses by cutting subscriptions and things like that. Maybe cutting subscriptions means that you can pay attention on reading more books or spending personal time with your friends and family and actually being more immersed instead of watching Netflix all the time. That can be an opportunity. Maybe it's that, okay, I'm actually going to be looking for better, healthier food, so I'm going to shop instead of order out all the time, which is going to give me an opportunity to learn how to cook, but it's also going to give me an opportunity to learn to cook with my family. I'm going to include the kids in this process as well. And I'm going to find ways to make it vegan or any of these kind of things, which is going to help um, uh, emotions, our mind, our body at the same time, right? So how can you turn problems into opportunities? And the final one is reinforcing habits. Think about how can you make things consistent in terms of what works. Once you figure out what works and you turn that into an opportunity, how can you harness that into a habit? So, Atomic Habits is a great book by James Clear, which is tells you about how to make it attractive, how to make it actually difficult not to, and that's by you might stack your habit with another habit. If you are thinking about buying as or spending as an issue, how can you make it so that you're always doing it around people who are not people who spend in a frivolous way, so that in the environment you find yourself difficult to use that pattern in order to break it. Little things like that. So recognize your strengths, what you're doing that actually works. Number two is reframing the challenges into opportunities. And once you do that, reinforce those as habits so you can stay consistent with what works. All right. So, really quickly, I'm going to break through some practical things that you can do in the moment. And I mentioned, Natasha, before that you mentioned some things that I'm going to reinforce now. So, the first one is the 3-minute reset. We did that last week. The breathing, the focus techniques before you make financial decisions. Try not to run straight into a financial decision because we're often still in fight or flight mode. But also think about daily reflections. And it doesn't necessarily need to be at the end of the day. It can be any time. But think about your choices that you're making. Are they done out of panic, or are they done out of purpose? Are they serving the now, or are they serving the then, as in the future version of you, right? And then financial resilience strategies as well. The pause before you buy rule, pause before you purchase rule. Especially on big purchases, wait 24 hours before you make that impulse. If you're walking by a Birkin store and there's a bag in there that seems to have your name on it, in that moment, you're going to feel impulse to buy, right? But come back to it tomorrow and see what happens. See if the decision is still the same. You might find that actually you sit there and think, maybe I don't actually need it. I realize I actually got two others that I haven't actually used before, right? Or maybe there's something else that is more of a priority that you might want to put that expense towards, and that you may not have noticed if you'd have bought that in the moment. The future self test is something I use a lot, which actually got from a friend of mine. And it was funny because we went to watch a movie, a show, and afterwards we got some food, and she put the dessert in a bag to take away, and she was like, "This is for my future self." Right. And so, what kind of financial or burnout prevention strategies can you put to please your future self? Ask yourself, what would future me thank me for? Like, would that future me thank me for this decision that I'm making right now? If I was to come back in a month, or in a couple of days, or would that future me be thinking, oh, why did I do that again? Oh my gosh, and then start beating yourself up about it because you knew it was a bad purchase in the first place, right? So, last one as an interaction, and then we're going to open up to the floor. Tay says to try to just keep going, as well as having someone to talk to. 100%. Having people to talk to is so important. A lot of the times we try and do a lot by ourselves without realizing that we can actually lean on community. And I know in the West, it tends to be relatively individualistic, but it's really important to actually have those people around us and nurture those relationships so they can support us as and when we need them. And Tay also said earlier on, understanding how to deal with stress and helping my child handle stress too while at school was one of the reasons why he wanted to come into this space. And thank you for that. A lot of the things we're talking right now apply to you no matter where you are. You can do these in school, you can do these at uni, you can do this at work or at home within your community. These are practical strategies that everyone can apply. We just happen to be creating the container for education at the moment. All right. So remember, which one of these could you start today? Is it the 3-minute reset? Planning ahead, if you know you're going to have a difficult decision that comes up, or if you find yourself in it, are you going to do some breathing? Are you going to stop for a minute, put the pause before you purchase? So you're going to ask yourself, would your future self thank you for this decision? Or do you already do all of these, right? Or do you have something else that you do which is even more impactful for you? We got number 2 here, pause before you purchase. For me, that's been really important. There's been some, like Amazon has made it, this click to buy, what do they call, buy now function, has made it so easy on a lot of stores to just be on your phone in bed and be click, click, click. You don't even feel the money coming out of your wallet anymore, which is another strategy. Maybe you decide you're going to have a budget to yourself and take it out in cash, and that is how you're going to spend it, so you can actually be aware that I'm spending this. One of the things I mentioned in the first session, Natasha, was to actually pay attention to your accounts. Open up your account on a daily basis, and have a note of when things come in and out of your account in terms of cash flow, because sometimes it's not just what comes out, but when it comes out, that can get us into the red. If too many things come out on the same day, that shoots us into the deficit, and then your bank starts calling you up and putting charges. If we were to separate them and space them out, that might be a better way to go. Another thing as well, since Tay is in the building, is insurance. Do you have life insurance and content insurance and all these kind of things? So if things do go wrong, it's not coming out of your pay. It's something that you're putting in as a rest assured. God forbid you become ill. God forbid you can't be working for 3 months, for example. Do you have your income protection? Do you have all of these things so that if something was to happen that is out of your control, then you don't have to worry about it? You know, you can do have a package which is going to continue to pay you while until you get back on your feet. Because otherwise, like if you marry that with what Natasha was saying about if you don't have like a month, for example, to aside, but then 3 months of illness comes, how are you going to survive? You know, so have a think about all these practical things that you can start to put in place. And remember, the snowball method isn't just with the debts; it can also be with savings as well. You know, start small, build up on it. Start with a habit first, and increase as you go along. All right. So, how can schools support staff? This is a question that we're starting to look at now as a partnership, because we are looking for how they can support you. And one of them could be better workload distribution. Are they paying attention to, um, do the teachers have enough teacher support to avoid sick days? You know, are they supporting financial literacy training for teachers? Is it part of your CPD at schools? What other things could they do? Like this is something you can put into the chats as well. Tay said the 3 minute reset. Definitely give that a go as well when you're next in your financial situation and you have to make a decision. Just give it a couple of minutes in the day, even if it's not the 24-hour thing. In the moment, having a pause. What they say is most emotions are about 90 seconds for it to flush out of our body. If it's anything longer than that, it's likely because we're going over it in our heads, which effectively resets the time. So if you can give yourself a pause of a few minutes and actually let the emotion run out of your body without thinking about the emotion or the thing, just allow yourself to be clear in the mind for a moment and then go back to it. Then you might find your decisions are completely different to the ones you would have made before. Okay. So I mentioned better workload balance, mental health support, financial well-being programs, more professional development. There are a lot of things that schools could be doing. And I know there's budget situations and restraints, but it might be worth, especially if you're in education, to actually bring some of the things up with your school board, your trustees, your unions. Have a conversation with them about what you can do to provide more support for you. And one of the things I realized as well is sometimes they're actually things that are set in place, but they don't communicate it to the actual staff themselves. So just ask them about what is the insurance policy, what is the healthcare benefits, what are the support, is there any private insurance, or is there any is there any influence that you have as an individual to say what kind of support you need at the next CPD, on the next teacher training day, and all those kind of things. And I think that is it. So we have about 12 minutes towards the end. We're just going to give a little bit of space um, before we round up and share what the offer is. But thank you to everyone who's been engaging in the chats. Thank you to everyone who's been putting the numbers in and any of the thoughts that you've had. So this is a quick Q&A session. You can put any questions into the chats. We'll put them onto screen and we will go to our offer in a few minutes. Natasha, any thoughts that maybe I missed off or anything you wanted to add as we've gone through?
No, you've been really thorough and you've echoed some of my points. It really is just the awareness. This webinar is just to highlight and let people be aware that yes, you're here for a reason. Yes, you're struggling, but now let's really take action and how you can really just make a difference in your life. Because sometimes we wait for the school to advocate for you and provide the resources, but until they do, can you advocate for yourself? Can you
Mhm.
take it on board to action it on your own before the school takes it on board for yourself? So I'm very aware of trying first within, and then if you get extra help, the more the merrier.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to support the people around you as well. Like if there's anybody around you who you're paying attention to, who you be like, oh, actually they need support, or
Yeah.
maybe I can just offer a space to talk about this in general. You'll be surprised how sometimes just talking things through, you might find some of the solutions you've been looking for. There are certain things that might only be able to be done in the formal sector. Like, so it might be something which only the board or, the government can actually do.
Yeah.
Even then, it's important to actually understand how those things work, so you can see how you can influence those things. So if it's something that only the government can do, who is your local councillor? Who is your local person at the council who might be running for office recently, or has certain bills that they're going to be passing, or who's the head of education within your borough? See if you can find out who these people are and make direct connections. We're in a social media world. You can contact these people directly nowadays, which is incredible. We've never been in this space before. Ask them what they plan to be doing about this, that, and the third. Like, give them options or ideas. If they're going to be speaking at your local hall, council hall, make sure you're there at the community meetings. Get your voice heard. And if you don't have the energy for that, support the people who are doing that, the activists, the peoples who are putting themselves on the front line, who to make these changes that you actually need as well. They need support too. Don't just wave from afar, but if they need support, whether it's like emotional support, financial support, whether they just need someone to click like on the, or like if they're doing a petition, for example, sign it, or there's lots of little things that we could do on a day-to-day basis as individuals to help the system. But then there's also things you can do as an individual to help yourself. And so it's important to kind of have an idea about, the large and small scale actions that you can do. And I know it can feel overwhelming in the moment, but sometimes those 24 hours or that little pause can help you to take a step back to be like, okay, what can I actually do as me at the moment? What do I have the capacity for? And work within that boundary. What we don't want you to do as well is to try and do everything. Right? Don't try and do everything for everybody by yourself. That is a surefire way towards burnout.
Yeah.
Start small. What can you do right now which would be little effort but maximum impact? Is it just to open that savings account? Is it just to start paying off, getting rid of that subscription that you haven't really been using in the last 3 years and you forgot it was even there, but it's just been coming out in the back, in the background? What is it that you can do that might be seem a little small now, but will have a big impact later on? And one thing I would offer as well is, if you are able to reduce your this is assuming you've got a budget done, right? So you know what your incomings and outcomings are, and we're assuming that we get into a stage where we're aiming for that point where the incomings at least meet your outgoings, as opposed to your outgoings exceeding your incomings. But one of the things I used to do is, like, I'll cancel a subscription and then that'll be it, but then it gets soaked up by something else.
Yeah.
So if you are to do something like that, put that the money that you would have put into the Netflix into your savings, for example, or something like that. Have it so that it's still tangibly going to something, because otherwise it would just fall into the pool of evidence.
Just to echo your point, Leslie in the chat said she had cancelled her subscription I've been paying for and not using it at 99 US dollars a month. So she just today she's cancelled that subscription. So I've put in the chat, Leslie, are you going to spend some or save some? Because let's keep it real. You've cancelled it. You're going to save yourself $100. Instantly, some people are going to be like, I'm going to spend it all, but some of you will save it some. So I hope, Leslie, this saving, you're going to put some away and spend some.
Mm. And think about it strategically as well. One of the exercises that I was thinking about doing today, or was it last week, was thinking about, if you came across £200 or 190 something dollars, what would be the first thing you would do with it? And remember, this is per month. So the first month, you might decide you want to take yourself out to a little massage or something like that. And then, the future ones, then you can set up your standing orders and all that kind of stuff to go into your savings or your investments or whatever it is. Like, sometimes it's and there's nothing wrong as long as there's a strategy in place that you've thought about. Like, Natasha mentioned mindful spending, like actually being mindful about it and thinking about it, as opposed to just reactively. Think proactively. Where would I like to be in 5 years? And it might sound ridiculous to you in the moment, but I want to be able to make decisions which aren't based on my financial circumstance. Okay, cool. So what would I need to be? Where would I need to be for that to be able to happen? Okay, I'll feel like I'll be able to do that if I had so much in the bank, or I had so much in savings, or so much in investments. Okay, cool. So what would I need to do to be able to make that happen? There's apps now. There's Hargreaves and Lansdowne. There's, if you any kind of thing, stocks and shares. There's ISAs. There's all kinds of ways that you can do these things to put them in, right? And it can be a small thing, but the thing about compound, especially compound interest, is it may seem small now, but I tell you, it will not be small later. And that later could be something that can change the game. Like, one of the things a friend of mine pointed out is they opened like a really small savings account for their child when they were born. And it was something almost minimal. I think it was like 10, £20 a month or something they put in their account from the moment they were born. But by the time they were 18, it was huge. It was enough
Yeah.
for them to cover like the entire uni. They cover all this kind of stuff, which otherwise they would have had to put into student loan debts and all this kind of stuff. So, or I think actually in their case they had the choice: is it going to go towards your education, or is it going to go towards your first deposit for your house? All that kind of stuff, from 10 to £20 a month. Like,
Wow.
it's but then over 18 years it builds up a lot. So there's lots of different strategies you can do, and a lot of this can alleviate the stress from your body. If you don't have to worry about it, just imagine what your lived experience will be like. I feel like it's been my turn to talk a lot now. You're gonna have to stop me when I start going. But yeah, I think maybe it's a good time to talk a little bit about the offer. Then, are there any more comments in the chats, by the way?
I've just checked no.
Okay, brilliant. So in that case, let me open that up. So, like I said, Natasha and I have been coming into this partnership with the idea to share a lot of our knowledge with schools to help. And we put together a package that we're looking to get into schools, and it's called the Educators Burnout and Financial Wellness Wellbeing Accelerator. So this one in itself includes training. So there's 2 deep dive training sessions. They're online. So as a school, you basically give access to the staff, and they will be able to work through it at their own pace. And one of them is on burnout recovery and stress mastery. The other one is on financial confidence for educators. And then after that, you have a live Q&A session, which you schedule as a school afterwards. So once everyone's gone through the material, we answer the questions and we give just like how we're saying right now. You ask us questions, we're going to respond with as specific responses as possible, so they can help with strategies. We'll help you with put together some ideas, and yeah, from your personal experience and what came up through the training. The next one is resources. So we got this implementation playbook, which is actually attached to the last part, which is the checklist. And it's basically, how do we implement this stuff that we're talking about? Because we've given you great strategies, but how do you actually put that into your practices day to day? And if you imagine it as a school, this can be really important. How can you make sure that the teachers are at least financially secure enough for finances not to be one of the worries on top of whatever else is going on in their life, right? If you can take that one off the shelf, then at least they can just focus on the students, for example. Yeah. So there's a checklist, which is basically a whole list of things that you can do to put in place, and strategies you can choose. You can combine them to create your own strategy. And there's a workbook that takes you through reflection exercises and action steps. Ultimately, it's a system for managing your stress and finances long term, right? And we've talked about a lot of that. Immediate term tends to be the fight or flight and impulse response. And then we're trying to shift into long term responses. And it gives you actionable tools to apply into your daily life. And it's a clear path for resilience, right? Resilience, it has a funny terminology at the moment. People hate the word. But resilience to me is, if there's a crisis right now, how long before you recover? That is all resilience is the gap between the crisis and the recovery. So really, when you're thinking about it, we want to be able to be resilient. We want to be able to say, okay, this happened right now, but actually that was only a week and I'm already back on my feet. I'm good, right? We want us to be able to, especially our loved ones, we want them to be in that space. And hopefully, when I say loved ones, you're also thinking about yourself. And then
Nice.
there's the upgrade options. Thank you. There's upgrade options, which is like one-to-one coaching support. Maybe you need something a little bit more personal and direct. And then there's a 6-week group coaching program as well, which is by cohort. So it's about 8 people per group. So I think that's basically it. So as a school, the question is, if you're someone who is in, if you're a headmaster or you're a deputy or you're someone within the directorship, you're on a board, you're a trustee, any of these kind of places, if you're a staff member, bring it up with your school and actually put this as something where, okay, we have a system, we have a product, we're ready to go as soon as you're ready to implement this. Like, is it something that you're thinking about for the next term? Is it something that you're thinking about for the next academic year? If so, this is something that we can get the conversation started from now. And the way to do that is to look at these two QR codes. The one on the left is a feedback form for the session, and we'll put the link in the chats as well later on as well. But then the one on the right is to book a call with us to come in, and it'll be me and Natasha will sit there and we'll speak to you about how to bring this program into your school to help your staff. And I think that is it. Thank you.
Tay has a question. How far
Yes.
can you come? Are these programs mostly remote or physical?
They're mostly remote. So it's allowing us to be able to serve people pretty much on the spot. If for it to be in person, I think that will be just a different, just to be a conversation. It depends on how far you are, what kind of needs there are. And what I would suggest is, if we're going to be in person, then it'll probably be more of a workshop day than just a consultation. The consultations themselves would be online, but when it comes to implementing and delivering, then we can talk about bringing it in person, because the in person does feel different to online. But there's also the element of time. There'll still be an element of online learning though. So that part is done before we would get involved anyway. So to make sure we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. But then for us to actually come in and deliver these sessions, then we can talk about doing it in person. And of course, if you want to fly us out to Dubai and stuff, I'm not going to be opposed to that. So yeah, just keep us posted. Yes. Any other questions? Just so you know, we're planning to finish at past, and so we're 3 minutes over. Apologies for that in terms of timekeeping. If you do have to go, you can go, but remember, this is all replay and saved, so you can come back later on and you see what you've missed. Put any questions into the chats. Just because we're ending it now doesn't mean we're not going to come back and answer any questions you might have. Get in touch with us individually. I am going to put some of these links in the chat afterwards, into the comment section, sorry. So have a look for that. And yeah, anything else you want to share, Natasha?
No, I just want to say thank you for everyone bearing with me with my runny hay fever nose. Apologies, but thank you for your time. We appreciate you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. And remember, get in touch with us direct, comment in the comments. We'll answer any questions, and book yourselves a call, and we'll be able to look at how we can bring these talks into the school. Finance and burnout, two big issues at the moment, especially when the global climate is crazy. So look forward to seeing you again as well. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be back on LinkedIn and YouTube Live. So keep an eye out for that. Next week, we'll be doing like a dummy run of what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks. So have a look out for that as well. But the only difference with that is it's going to be on Zoom, and there's going to be a little bit more of an application process where you can ask us questions, so we can make sure we tailor it towards what you need. And I think that's it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night, and see. Welcome, Joyce.